Alright, here we go with the substitution method first for number 1. And what's nice about number 1 is it looks like one of the equations, it's like step 1's already done for you, okay? I choose one equation and then I isolate a variable. I'm going to choose this equation because the variable is already isolated. So step 1 is done. Now step 2, I'm supposed to replace the second equation with whatever I have in the first. So let's see, this is a y equals, so down here I'm going to box the y because those have to match. Now this y is coming out, and in the place of that y is going all of what the y is equal to. So this is the substitution step 2. This is my step 2. I take out the variable in the second equation and replace it with the first equation. Okay, and now I solve. So hopefully if you got this part down, if you do end up messing it up, it's probably just you're just distributing. This is a -3, guys. Okay, so -3 times 4x is -12x. -3 times -6 is 18. Okay, 7x minus 12x is -5x. And now I need the x by itself, so I'm going to subtract 18. So I'm getting x is 0 once I do all my math, okay? And you can hit pause and look this over if you need to see what I did. I'm just doing the basic moving stuff around and dividing. I'm getting x is 0. Now, that's all good and great, but I need my y, right? So how do I find my y? Well, I go back up to my step 1 equation and I plug in the number I just got. So I plug in my 0 here. So 4 times 0 minus 6. Well, that equals -6, and so that is my y and my solution. Okay, number 2. So I am going quicker than on the notes, but that's because I've assumed that you've already tried at least a couple of these. And if you need to go back and get a slower version, go back to the video, okay? Alright, number 2, I need to choose an equation and isolate a variable. I'm choosing this one because a variable is already isolated. So, step 1 is finished. Step 2 is to figure out what to replace up here and to replace it. So, if the y is by itself here, I'm going to replace this y. And the way I do it is I recopy all this, but instead of a y, I take out the y and put in the equation that it's equal to. Oh, that's a negative. Okay, so I've recopied the other equation. I've substituted the y for the whole other equation. And now, same thing. Distribute. Let me go ahead and put these together. Oh, I'm getting a 0. Okay, so that's a 0. Minus 15 equals -8. Oh, okay, so this is one of our special cases. Because check it out. -15 equals -8. My variables totally disappeared. And I need to look at this. Is this a true statement or a false statement? Does -15 equal -8? No, it doesn't. And so since that's a lie, that means there is no solution to this problem. I'm finished and I can move on. Okay. Number 3. Okay, so for number 3, boo. Alright, I don't like this already because nobody's already isolated. So let me choose an equation and get a variable by itself. Alright, I'm going to choose equation number 1. Because it looks like this would be easy to get by itself. So that's what I'm going to do over here. I'm going to work on getting the x by itself, which means I need to subtract 7y from both sides. As 0 minus 7y, I mean 0 is a 0, it doesn't exist anymore. So this is what I'm getting. X equals -7y. So step 1 is done. Now, since x is what I got by itself, then in this equation, the second equation, x is going to come out, and it's going to be replaced by whatever x is equal to, which in this problem is -7y. Recopy the rest of the problem, and now you're in business. So what is 2 times -7y? Well, it's -14y. What is negative 14y plus 2y? I'm just going to add those together because they are like terms. Then I'm going to divide. Negative 1? Okay, great. So my y is a negative 1. Now, how do I find my x, peoples? Well, I go back to one of my equations, and I told you guys in the last video, I usually always go to my step 1. Whatever step 1 was, that's where I go plug it back in. So I'm going to take negative 1 and plug it in for this y. So what's negative 7 times negative 1? Positive 7. So that would be my solution for x. Okay? And now the last one in this section, number 4. Just copying it down really quickly like. Alright, cool. So when I look at all these terms, they're all pretty complicated looking except for this one. So for my step 1, I'm going to choose this equation and try to get the y by itself. So how do I get the y by itself? Well, I move this other thing to the other side. So those are gone. Bring that down. Now, these can't go together. Please don't call that a negative 19, okay? They're different, so I need to make sure that I just write them side by side, okay? And now, what? Now what? Step 1 is finished. There's step 1. Step 2, I go to the other equation, which is this one, okay? And I'm going to, since y is what I got by itself, I'm going to replace this y with this equation that I just got, okay? So when I come down here and I try to write, oh, my pen's not writing. Give me just a second. Why is my pen not writing? Draw. Hold on a sec. Okay, so where were we here? This is, okay, so this is what I just got by itself. Okay, so here's my step 1. Now, where's my x? It disappeared. Okay, now I need to go to this equation, and I'm going to substitute the y that's here for the y that I just got by itself there. So it's going to look like negative 5x minus 7, and then in parentheses that y comes out and all this madness goes in. And this is what I'm solving. This is not going to be a fun one. Okay, negative 5x. Now you get to distribute, guys. What is 7 times 16? I don't even know. Let me figure that out over here. 4 times, is that 11? Yes, okay. So I'm getting an 1112 plus 21x. So remember, that was a negative 7, so you've got to distribute the negative to both. So both of these should be positive. Make sure your negatives are in check, okay? Now, what's a negative 5x and a 21x? Well, that's going to give me 5 and 21. That's going to give me a positive 16x. And now I need to subtract 112 from both sides. Bring that down. Ugh, this one's just got big, ugly, nasty numbers. Okay, what is 16 minus 112? I think that's a 96. And then I'm hoping that 16 goes into 96. I'm thinking 6 times. Yes, it is 6 times. So when I divide by 16, I get x is 6. Awesome. Okay, so we're not done. All that work just to get the first coordinate. Now I need my y, right? Well, to get my y, I go back to my step 1 equation and plug in the 6 that I just got. So y equals negative 16 minus 3 times 6. And if you're wondering, like, well, how does she know where to plug it in? Well, you know, you just found x, so be really mindful of the fact you just found 6 is x, so that's where it gets plugged into that equation. Okay, so negative 16 minus 18 is a negative 34, I believe. Wow, that is an ugly answer, but that is the answer nonetheless. Okay, that's why I wanted you to do this over 2 days. They're going to take a lot of brain power. So after you do tomorrow's elimination method, then come back to this video, and at minute 9.5 is where you're going to start back up, minute 9:30, and it will be the elimination method. All right, see you tomorrow on the solutions. All right, so if you're here, then that means we are ready to ready to rock with elimination. I told you guys this is my favorite method. I'm going to switch colors. I'm bored of the red. Okay, and negative x plus 5y equals 15. Okay, cool. So here's my number 5, and we are going to eliminate. So these are already lined up, so how do I make something disappear? Well, I'm checking out, this is a positive 1 and that's a negative 1. So I'm thinking if I add these equations together, then right off the bat, the x's are gone. See, x plus a negative x, that's gone. Negative 3y plus 5y is a 2y. And then negative 7 plus 15 is an 8. And then I just divide by 2, divide by 2. Okay, so I'm getting y equals 4 for the first one. And now I need to find my x. So to find x, take either of these two equations and plug in the y equals 4. I'm just going to take the first one. There's really no reason. I'm just taking the first one. So I stuck that 4 in the spot of y. So some number minus 12 equals negative 7. Now, if you can't do that in your head, just solve for x. Just add 12 to both sides. X is equal to, is that a 5? Yes, 5. Okay, so 5, 4 is the point. Number 6. All right, on number 6, negative 4x plus 4y equals negative 12. All right, cool. So I'm going to go ahead and just add these equations right off the bat because it looks like if I do, that cancels. So negative 4 plus 4 is 0. Oh, but then look what happens here. I'm getting a 0 plus a 0 equals a 0. So I'm adding I'm adding those together. And what happens is I end up with 0 equals 0. So is 0 equal to 0? Well, yeah, that's true. 0 is 0. And so when that happens, guys, this is one of those other special cases of infinite solutions. So if all the junk disappears, then you just analyze the numbers. If it's a true statement, it's infinite. If those numbers didn't match, you would say no solution. Okay? Number 7, 6x plus 5y equals negative 5. And 6x plus normal y equals negative 1. Okay, cool. So here's my two equations. And if I add, I'm going to get a bunch of positive numbers. But I'm thinking if I subtract these, we'll be in better shape. So 6x minus 6x, there's my 0. Yay. 5y minus y is 4y. And then negative 5 minus negative 1. Negative 5 minus negative 1. So write it out if you have to because that's a plus positive. Beautiful. And then I divide by 4, so I get negative 1. So my y is negative 1. Now I need my x. So choose either of these and plug in the y that you just got. I'm just going to choose the top one. So I've got 6x plus 5 times, what was my y? Negative 1 equals negative 5. So 6x minus 5 equals negative 5. Let me just solve for x. So add 5, add 5. Ooh, 0. So x equals 0. 0 divided by anything is 0. So there's my answer for number 7. Cool. Moving on to number 8. All right, on number 8, I hope the numbers are a little friendlier. And what's after that? 8x. Okay, cool. So on this one, I'm focused on these y's because it looks like that would be easy to cancel out the y's if I just subtract this whole equation. So remember to subtract every single term. So negative 10x minus 8x. Negative 10 minus 8 is that, okay? Y minus y goes to 0, yay. Negative 10 minus negative 10 means plus positive, so that's a 0. So hopefully you got the 0 and you didn't mess that one up. So x is 0. And so if x is 0, now I go back and find my y. I'm just going to go back to this equation here and plug it in. It doesn't matter which one. If I plug in the 0 here, negative 10 times 0, that's a 0. So 0 plus y equals negative 10, which means that y equals negative 10. All right? So, yay. Now we move on to number 9. X minus 3y equals 24. And then 5x minus 5y equals 20. Okay, cool. This is one of the ones like I had to do in the notes where I can't just get something to cancel like right off the bat. So instead, what I'm going to do is figure out the easiest way to make somebody cancel. Now, down here I have a positive 5x, and the easiest way to cancel a positive 5x is if that was a negative 5x. So what I'm going to do is multiply this whole equation by negative 5 so that I can cancel something out. So I'm going to go over here and rewrite it. So distribute the negative 5 to everybody, okay? So what's negative 5 times negative 3? Awesome. And then how about negative 5 times 24? I don't know. Negative 5 times 24 would be a negative, that would be a 0, 120? Negative 120? Yep, I think that's right. Okay, cool. So that's the new equation once you figure out what to multiply by. Then I recopy the equation that was there with it, and they're all lined up. And now look, now it's okay to add these together, and people are going to go away, right? These cancel. What about 15y plus a negative 5y? Well, that would be a 10y, and then this would be a negative 100. So when I divide by 10, I'm getting negative 10. Yes, that's a 10, not a 16. There we go. So, yay, so y is negative 10. So now that I know y is negative 10, how do I find x? Well, I'm just going to go back to, I'll just go back to this original one that I had here and plug in the y is negative 10. So x minus 3 times negative 10 equals 24. And then I solve this out. So x plus 30 equals 24. So what number plus 30 is 24? Well, I'm getting negative 6. And if you can't do that in your head, subtract 30, and then you'll get it that way, okay? All right, so that's number 9. Now, number 10 is probably going to be along the same lines, okay? It's probably going to be something that I have to multiply by, so let's see what we've got here. 9x minus 3y equals negative 30. And then we've got 3x minus 5y equals 10. Okay, so with a problem like this, everybody has a coefficient, but don't let that freak you out. Just look for commonalities. Like 3 and 5 don't have a lot in common, but look at the 9 and the 3. I know that if I multiply this one, I'll be able to get the opposite of that, right? So if this is a positive 9x, I want this to be a negative 9x, right? So how do I make this a negative 9x? Well, I multiply by negative 3. And if I do that, I know these two are going to cancel whenever I add them together, okay? So that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to recopy this one. 9x minus 3y equals negative 30. And I'm going to multiply this one. Just remember to distribute to everybody. So negative 3 times 3x is negative 9x. Negative 3 times negative 5y is positive 15y. And then this will make, I believe, a negative 30 over here. Awesome. Okay, cool. Now what? Now we're ready to go. I'm just going to add these equations together. These cancel. Yay. And then I add these, and let's see, a negative 3, that's going to be a positive 12y equals, add those together, negative 60. When you divide by 12 on both sides, you're going to get a negative, is that a 5? Yes, a negative 5. Cool. So y is negative 5. Now, how do I get my x? I go back to one of my equations and find it. I'm going to go to this one just because it's on top. I mean, it doesn't really matter, right? You go to whatever you want. So I've got 9x minus 3 times negative 5 equals negative 30. And I'm going to solve this. So 9x, is that a plus 15? Good. Now I'm trying to solve for x. So minus 15, and you'll get 9x equals negative 45. Divide by 9, divide by 9, and x equals -5. Oh, cool. So they both equal the same thing. That doesn't happen a lot, but there it is. So there's my answer for number 10. All right, this is cool stuff. We're going to do a lot of practice with it if you're coming to the tutorials. But if you're not coming to the tutorials, please take this week seriously. I know some people slack from time to time during the summer, or maybe it's been really easy for you this whole summer, and this is the first lesson that's just kind of weird and challenging. Don't give up on it. Go watch that video again and try. If that's not working for you and you want to email me or call me or whatever, please let me know, because I do want you to have some kind of a grasp on this before you start school. All right, guys, we will see you next week.